Tobias Ellwood is chair of the Defence Select Committee, and he joins me now. Hello, Tobias. Thank you very much for coming back on GB News. Good to talk to you.
Good to see you, sir.
One thing that puzzles me is we still talk about money. Money isn't really what matters. Output is what matters. Capability is what matters. You're not impressed by money, are you? You want to know about capability, don't you?
I do, and it's the wise spending of that funds that is so important. But there does get to the point where if you trim the defence budget so far, then there's very limited ability for the armed forces to provide the services, the security that we require. And I'm afraid we've been rather lackluster, rather complacent over the last 30 years since the end of the Cold War in seeing our Army, Air Force and Navy trimmed down to what they are today, unable to meet, I'm afraid, the huge threats that are coming over the horizon. And when you advance that, it's not just the conventional threats on those domains, it's also cyber and space as well. You talked about a war footing. In my view, we are entering a new Cold War, more complicated this time because of Russia and China morphing together. Globalization in its current form is dying as countries, states retreat from global exposure and are forced to choose sides because of what's going on in Ukraine. Bigger picture, we're entering a very dark chapter. We should be investing in our defense and our security as a P5 nation. We're one of those nations that steps forward, perhaps when arguably others hesitate. We can only do that if we have the hard power to back up our strategic thinking, thought leadership, and our ability to influence other countries to step forward because aggression is on the rise.
Tobias, I've been both Chief Secretary to the Treasury and Secretary of State for Defence, and just today I feel more like Chief Secretary because I'm so shocked by the wastage in the Ministry of Defence. I'm so shocked by what's happening with the Ajax fighting vehicle, a sort of tank. I'm so shocked by the Prince of Wales, the aircraft carrier, which is presently not able to put to sea. You must be cross about these things as well. What is the argument to the Treasury in view of the wastage and misspending which is occurring?
Yeah, you're right to highlight these. It's something that the Defence Committee, we spend a lot of time analysing and scrutinising the wastage that does take place. But you're building huge bits of kit that there is no blueprint to follow in the past. The Queen Elizabeth carrier, for example, was the first of its type. You don't build a prototype and then, okay, we got things wrong there. Our next model will, be perfect. Your final solution is the prototype itself. So there are often frustrations, things that weren't anticipated. I'm afraid also change of the spec. The people are coming forward, ministers saying, can I add this? Can I add that? Changes in technology as well. That's not to dismiss the fact that yes, there has been wastages. But we can't take away from the fact that should not be a reason not to recognise the threat picture is changing. Our Army, our Air Force, our Navy are too small for what we need to do. Even Jens Stoltenberg, the head of NATO, is now saying that we need to increase defence spending, and it doesn't look like we're going to be doing that.
The Australians, we hope, are going to buy nuclear submarines from us. What assurance or reassurance would you give to the Australians that we're going to be capable of building these in an effective way?
Well, I think this is great for British industry. The Astute-class submarine is one of the best in its class across the world. So there is an example, of us getting something right. There have been cost overruns, but the fact that we're able to support, export this design to Australia, this is on the back of a frigate deal as well, the Type 26, showing that there is a strong bond developing between Australia and, of course, our closest security ally, the United States. I will stress, though, that this is about procurement, about standing up to China in the South China Sea. Strategically, we need to start thinking about some form of NATO, in my view, in the longer term. That would probably include other nations coming forward, including India and indeed Japan. There's an organization called the Quad, that's United States, Australia, India and Japan. I would hope that would be expanded to include France and Britain to be the strategic thinkers as to how we actually uphold security in that region, with AUKUS acting as the procurement advance to enable Australia to work with us in order to patrol the seas.
AUKUS being the submarine programme, and when we talk about levelling up, to bring the argument back to Britain, You talk about levelling up. Think about the jobs and the income that is going to go into Barrow-in-Furness, where the submarines are built. Many thanks indeed, Tobias Ellwood. Thanks for coming on GB News again.